You've got a city of millions on one side, and the full power of the federal government on the other. New York's incoming mayor, Zohran Mamdani, has basically drawn a line in the sand against President Trump's immigration enforcement. And what that's done is set the stage for a really dramatic conflict. This isn't just another political headline, you know? This is a high-stakes showdown, and it's brewing right now on the streets of America's biggest city.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with the very fragile peace between these two leaders. Then we'll get to the viral video that really lit the fuse. We'll look at the mayor's defense, the federal government's response, and then really dig into the constitutional debate at the heart of all this. And finally, we'll look at the massive showdown that seems to be on the horizon.
All right, let's set this stage a little. The relationship between Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani and President Trump has always been, well, let's just say volatile. But for a brief moment, after a face-to-face meeting, there was this surprising bit of calm, a little truce, right before the storm hit.
I mean, listen to this. After their meeting, President Trump's tone was so friendly it was almost jarring. You had headlines like the New York Post's "I love you, Mom" popping up all over the place. And for a second there, it really did seem like these two fierce political rivals might have actually found some common ground.
Yeah, that warmth didn't last long. Almost immediately, the administration's border czar, Tom Homan, came out with a completely different message. He promised to ramp up ICE operations, not just in New York, but because it's a sanctuary city. That's a place that limits how much it helps federal immigration agents. So yeah, the truce was pretty much over before it even started.
So how did we get from that fragile peace to what feels like an all-out war of words? Well, the conflict really exploded not because of some new policy or a press conference, but because of a short instructional video posted online by the mayor-elect himself.
Mamdani put out this Know Your Rights video on social media. It was aimed directly at New York's immigrant community, which is, over 3 million people. But this wasn't just a message of support. Oh no, it was a practical step-by-step guide on how to interact with, and let's be honest, how to resist federal immigration agents.
The video is basically a playbook for non-cooperation. Look at this. It tells people to demand a judicial warrant, one signed by a judge, not just any old piece of paper. It reminds them they have the right to remain silent. And here's the kicker. It points out that ICE agents are legally allowed to lie to them. And finally, it tells them to just keep asking over and over, "Am I free to go?"
Now, as you can imagine, the backlash was immediate. But Mamdani and his allies, they didn't back down one bit. Instead, they framed the video not as an act of obstruction, but as a really important public service.
And he got some major backup. New York's own Governor Kathy Hochul came right to his defense. She basically said she had his back 100%, arguing that with everything going on, it's absolutely essential for people to know what their rights are so they don't get taken advantage of.
And you have to understand, this video wasn't just some random thing. It was a direct follow-through on one of Mamdani's biggest campaign promises, that under his watch, the NYPD will not cooperate with ICE on civil immigration enforcement. He's making it crystal clear that he plans to protect and even strengthen the city's sanctuary laws. While the response from the federal government and its supporters was, as you can guess, swift and incredibly harsh. They didn't see a public service video. They saw a mayor-elect who is actively encouraging people to break the law and putting federal officers in danger.
The Department of Homeland Security fired back with this absolutely staggering statistic. They claimed that assaults against their agents had shot up by over 1,000%. And they directly blamed what they called anti-ICE rhetoric from sanctuary city politicians for creating a more hostile and dangerous environment for their officers.
Critics like Raphael Mengua from the City Journal said the video was basically a wink and a nod to obstruction. They warned that this kind of message just fuels the fire for the sort of chaotic, sometimes violent clashes we've already seen between protesters and federal agents in other cities like LA and Chicago.
So when you strip everything else away, this entire firestorm really boils down to one fundamental question. Who is in charge here? It's a head-on collision between a city's power to govern itself and the federal government's constitutional authority. And at the very heart of this legal fight is something called the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution. Now, what it basically says is that when federal and local laws clash, federal law wins, period. The courts have said again and again that immigration enforcement is an exclusively federal job. So for the federal government, this clause is pretty much their trump card in the whole debate.
And here's where you see the two sides of the argument laid out. New York City says, hey, we have the right to decide how to use our own resources, like the NYPD.
Choosing not to help with civil immigration cases isn't obstruction. But the federal government comes back and says, not so fast. Immigration is our job, and any local policy that gets in the way of our agents doing that job is, by definition, unconstitutional. Now, while New York is definitely pushing the boundaries here, you have to say that legal history tends to favor the federal position.
So this clash of wills has really pushed both sides right to the edge. The talk has gotten more and more intense, and now the big question is, what actually happens when federal agents and city police come face-to-face on the streets of New York?
This all led an interviewer to ask Mayor-elect Mamdani the ultimate question, the one that could take this whole thing from a legal debate to an actual physical confrontation. The question was, could the NYPD, under his command, actually arrest federal ICE agents?
Mamdani's answer was just a masterclass in not saying no. Think about what he's saying here. By suggesting that an ICE agent breaking the law should be held accountable, he's basically saying that his administration, not Washington, gets to be the judge of that. The implication is just staggering. He's opening the door to the possibility of the NYPD actively interfering with and even arresting federal officers.
And that's where we are now, in a standoff. You've got a mayor-elect who's claiming he has the ultimate authority over the law inside his city, and you have a federal government asserting its constitutional power. You know, this is so much bigger than just New York. It's a profound test of how power is balanced in America. And it leaves us with one critical question. When a city draws a line in the sand this bold against the federal government, who is ultimately forced to back down?